School PR Podcast. Welcome back. Your guess is as good as ours.
Ready or not, here they come. Be sure to visit schoolstatus.com, peachjar.com, nickelstrategies.com, and s'more.com. Advocating for public education, sharing our stories and celebrating our schools, students, and staff. From crisis communications to media relations, social media, and everything in between, we're here to give you the best strategies, tools, and techniques to help you help your community. Welcome to the School PR Podcast, brought to you by Peach Jar, School Status, Nickel Strategies, and s'more. Love 'em or leave 'em. Here's your hosts, Matthew Jennings and Ryan Ferran.
And welcome back to the School PR Podcast, everyone. Matthew Jennings and Ryan Ferran here. Glad you are with us as well. Matthew, how are you, sir?
Awesome. How's it going, Ryan?
It's going good. We decided to have no clue as far as a topic.
We have no
topic
topic
to talk about today.
We'll just do it. How's school going for you this week? Let's talk about that. How's school going the rest of this week following the fires? In the last podcast we had with Gail.
Yeah, that was a good podcast. A lot of people have listened to that one. Episode 127, Special Report, Southern California Wildfire Crisis Communications with Gail, myself, and Matthew. So Gail is close to the Palisades fires down there. I am very close to the Eaton one in Arcadia. We shut down schools for 3 days. Gail shut down schools. A lot of schools are still out. So yeah, it's a good question. I'm glad you asked that. We're doing good. We were out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of last week. We came back Monday. Everything, our maintenance, custodial crews did an amazing job cleaning it. We had a lot of wind damage. Before the fires, if you're not in Southern California, Matthew, you know this because I'm sure the winds were brutal there, but before the fires, and what made it really bad was this windstorm, the Santa Anas. So that night, I guess that was Tuesday, early morning, late night into Wednesday, the winds were just flying through Santa Anas. And so there was so much wind damage with down power lines and trees. So our campuses had a lot of work. We had a roof completely ripped off one of the buildings at our high school. But other than that, it wasn't too bad. We got it cleaned up. Air quality was really a lot better. And, but we're still dealing with, we have a lot of staff and families that have been evacuated or lost their home completely, which is terrible. So we're working on fundraising support. We're working with the unions as far as helping them with time off. And so they're not penalized. So we're trying to give them, 10 basically free days if they need them. So that's kind of the next level of these crisis communications that you never think of. It's meeting with your exec team. How do you support your staff? Because we probably have 20 or so staff that have been impacted, maybe 12 to 15 that have lost homes, and then some that didn't lose their home, but they've been evacuated. They can't get back in for weeks, so they're still out. So getting them leave and then doing accrual sick bank so different members of different unions can donate, and then allowing them some accessibility to use more PN than they normally would. So that's been kind of this week is meeting with the unions, figuring out an MOU, getting it done as quickly as possible so people that need time off can take it. They don't have to worry about exceeding, sick or PN. So that's been kind of the next phase for us.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Taking care of people. That's awesome. You guys are working on that. Hopefully other districts are following suit, and hopefully other companies and just organizations are doing something similar, because there's a lot of displaced individuals, and it's not always easy to prepare for a natural disaster at this level. And the winds were insane. I mean, for anybody that doesn't understand what that was, we're talking like tornado force winds here, gusts 90, 95, 100 miles an hour in areas. So, you throw a fire on top of that and it's just impossible.
Yeah, now there's a lot of talk so a lot of schools burned down in Palisades, Pasadena, which is right next to us. A lot of schools have damage. So those families that don't have schools to go to, they've been evacuated. The governor signed an executive order to help make it a lot easier to get schools to release you so you don't have to go through all that paperwork. We know declining enrollment and marketing for students is very sensitive in education among school districts. So that's been kind of interesting too, as far as what that looks like. So we've taken a few students that are displaced. I know one or two that are living in Arcadia, so it makes it very easy for them because they're here. That's where they've been evacuated to. But there's been a lot of talk about that. We know the McKinney-Vento, where the homeless, so a lot of people would fall into that. So that's been kind of the next level talk too among districts. Okay, so you almost feel bad for the districts that are burning down, dealing with it, and if their students are leaving on top of that, will they be made whole on the back end through ADA? Are they going to do both? How is that going to work? And then at the end of the year next year when schools are recovered. But those districts are they're trying to figure out, new campuses for them to go, virtual learning options. So I feel like that's going to be a little bit messy and need to be cleared up. And hopefully everyone's made whole with that.
Yep. I would agree with that 100%. That's going to get crazy. Yeah, declining enrollment was already an issue. So, well, the fires, and I haven't followed it as much the past couple of days, just myself. I mean, are they getting that contained up in that area, and it's looking a lot better now?
The winds have cooperated a lot. That was the big issue with both fires. So containment numbers keep going up. And so what containment means, I learned this years ago you probably know this, you're an outdoorsman, but what containment means is just they have a hold around that percentage of that fire where it's still going, but they feel like there's no way that could escape that containment.
Yeah.
So you want your containment, even when your containment's 100%, doesn't mean your fire is out. Right. So containment's growing with both the Eaton Palisades fire. There's been other spot fires popping up, but now they're calling for a little bit more winds again next week. So that's be a challenge, and it's weird, as you know, Matthew, you're in a very cold place in California right now, and it's chilly where we're at normally, but it's odd because these fires are burning and it's so cold outside. But the one factor is how the humidity and how low and dry it is.
Very dry. Yeah, that's one thing that's unfortunate for us. And then there's also talk now about, do we want rain right now? A lot of rain, because now we've got the potential for significant mudslides and the degradation of the land that's been burned down. And so, I mean, we're in this kind of weird catch-22. So, and I know we've talked a lot about the fires, and we had a whole podcast dedicated to it, but it's just good. I appreciate kind of the follow-up and the wrap up here a little bit on kind of where you all are at as we end this week and head into the weekend.
Yeah, it was good too, because we had a CalSPRA call. They got some people together. It was nice. Trinette, Gail, and Jake kind of led that, and it was good to chat with some people. So it was I have my SGV people and a little bit beyond here that we have a group, which is great. But there were some people from Santa Barbara on there, Ventura, and I used to work in news up in that area, and you hit it on the head. The mudslides, that's the next thing, because you think, all right, we're good for a while. We just went through this major natural disaster, but you could be the next one to get it when the rains come, because you have nothing to hold in, and they're all hillsides.
Yeah,
so
it's all hillsides.
The hills,
yep.
All these schools are right below hills. I mean, where it burned right above our school, we have a picture with our middle school, and there's flames right up. It looks like the school's on fire, but it's a little bit behind it, but that's a whole hillside.
Yeah.
We had a mudslide down, took over like 4 of our basketball courts a few months ago just from a water sprinkler.
Oh, wow.
Left on. So the mudslides are the next thing. So it's like you can't really, get some sleep over the weekend, but that will be the next thing, and preparing people for that, resources.
Yep.
So you're right. I mean, that's a really good call, because, man, I saw one up in Santa Barbara that was just devastating. They had the fires, and then I forget, it wasn't that much long later, they got the rains, and there was nothing to stop the mud.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this kind of a little bit of a segue here, and you were in journal. You had a media and on-air background. So let's talk a little bit about misinformation. So I see a lot of misinformation spread on social media, on even certain news outlets. I've seen that California was turning away firefighters from other states. It's like, no, we weren't. In fact, LA County had an open call for anyone with firefighting experience retired or just volunteer. They were asking for anyone to come, please help. So it's kind of disappointing when you see some of this misinformation out there. What do we got? What do you kind of suggest as far as misinformation goes, getting your information just from social media, news outlets, how to make sure that what you're reading is based in fact?
Yeah, it's tough because I think you're right. That's the world we're in. People are watching some news, especially during crisis. News becomes very relevant, but social media is where a lot of news is shared and things are put out there. So you really want to be on top of that. For us, it was interesting because there was a report before we closed down schools on Friday that we were shutting down, and we hadn't made that decision yet. So one of the local news stations had that. Another district very close to us had the same thing. They called me, asked me if I can call them, correct it.
Yeah, geez.
So when people ask to help, whether you're in the area or not, we talked about this on 127 in our last week's podcast talking about this. It's like, that's one of the things you can do for people is make sure there's no misinformation about you and your district. And when you're closed, when you're opening, are you going virtual? Is independent an option? So those are things, and the media, and it's understandable, they're taking in so much information. It's happening so fast.
Yep.
And in LA County, our media market, it's enormous. There's 100+ districts here. So for them to make a mistake is understandable, get it confused, or the wording too is like very nuanced too, because you're saying, like, if you're talking about indoor activity, if it gets worse, it'll be this. And sometimes they take that as it is worse. And so it's that is a tough one, but vetting sources and letting your families know that you are originator of your information and only you.
Absolutely. Solid point there. Yeah. And this is a good time to talk about social media channels just in general, and just any of your news outlets that you have access to, whether it's your mass notification system or it's your social media or it's your websites, in whatever ways you've chosen to set up communicating with parent guardians. One of the things you need to really emphasize, and I did this each year in my districts, was asking parents and guardians specifically to follow district social media feeds, not just your child's school. In the event of an emergency like this, if a district is set up so that, each school is running their social media accounts independently of the school district, well, then the district administration has to rely on that school principal to get on there and post open and close times for the school or early dismissal times, right? That kind of thing. So it's really critical, especially in times of emergency and crisis, that parent and guardians know that your district social media feeds will likely be one of the quickest and most efficient ways to access information. School social media feeds are going to be just as important, but that central hub. And so if you're a district that has that kind of decentralized like that, might be something you want to consider as well. I know that we went through a huge initiative in one of my previous districts where we worked with each school site to set up a Google Doc that only I and one other person had access to at the district level, that had all the keys to all the social media feeds across the district. So every school, everything, I was able to go in and post on their behalf. And many times I did. In the event of a crisis or an emergency, many times I would say, you know what, I'll hand you your social media. I'll get out there and post the stuff for you. And a lot of times that was a huge relief to the principal. But that also had an added benefit. And really what sparked it for me was, we had somebody leave and nobody had the keys to that account anymore at a school. And they're like, how do I log in? And, it's like, all right, I'm going to sort this, but it had some other benefits as well.
It's a really good point, because during all this with us, power was such a big problem. So you don't know what people had access to. Maybe they couldn't watch the news, or they couldn't get their laptop, but they had maybe a phone. In our emails, we always tell them, please follow our social media as well. And we say, you may have power issues, or we might have power issues too. And the only thing we can get is something up on our Facebook page.
Yes.
So that's a really good point. I like the other thing you said too about if you have the keys and access to your other accounts, utilize those, because there are followers in your community that are probably following them that are not following your district account. Totally. So that's a really, really good point that I didn't think about. I have the keys to a couple that I don't really use. I just, for that reason of PTAs and stuff, I said, make me an admin. And then that way, when you leave and everyone forgets the password, I'll have access and get people back in.
Yes. That's a real deal.
Yeah. And then it's like thinking about those social media accounts, you're right, that you don't use, but you have access to. We started a TikTok a couple years ago, and we don't really use it for news stuff at all, but I utilized it for sure. And then our LinkedIn, I mean, a lot of us have LinkedIn's. We don't really post a ton on there, mostly job stuff, but I use
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah, that's good.
Just so you're saturating, and it's almost hard to miss the information if you're in our community.
Well, it's so true. Now, you just said something that we could talk about a little bit right now, which is the Supreme Court upheld the TikTok ban. And so I know here at Peach Jar, at least, we're talking about how we're going to legally probably have to close down our account, what we do with it, and that kind of stuff. So if you are a district out there using TikTok, I think the law goes into effect on Sunday. The current White House administration signaled that it would not enforce the law for 36 hours, essentially kind of puts it off to the new administration. And if the new administration doesn't move to extend it or anything, that law is in effect on Sunday. Hypothetically speaking here, not hypothetically, it is speaking, but they've kind of punted it down the road to the new administration. So we'll see what they do with it, but just something to be thinking about if you are a district using TikTok right now.
Yeah, it's a good point. I heard Trump wants to save it. I don't know what that means.
I heard this too.
So what does it, so they're banning it. From a technical perspective, does that mean it's shutting off, but it's still on our phones and we can still use it, just won't be updated? Like, what does that entail?
I actually think, that we'll see it removed from like the App Store. I think, we'll see it blocked from our phones and our devices, certainly our servers. So if it's banned at the national level, I really don't think we'll have access to it. No.
Really? Okay. Interesting.
I could be wrong, but that's what's happened with some other things. There's actually a couple of other instances of things going on out there right now that Supreme Court's been debating and different stuff, and I think that's been what's happened in the past. So,
what do you think about that?
I think it's very interesting when you really start digging into the TikTok thing and the whole China connection and, conspiracy theories and all that other stuff. It gets muddled really, really quickly. So it goes back to what we were talking about just a few minutes ago about misinformation. It's really hard to know what's true and what's not, especially since we at this level of the populace probably aren't in the know about what's really going on and what the dangers are or aren't.
Yeah. I haven't followed it too much. For me, it's kind of bittersweet. If TikTok has done anything, it has nailed the algorithm, unlike any social media platform has nailed it before.
Yeah.
You'll tell yourself, oh, I'm just going to do 5 minutes on TikTok. And 2 hours later, you're like, what in God's name have I been doing for 2? I mean, it knows, it's measuring how long you watch each type of video. And then it's not like, oh, the next time they log on, it's like, no, in a minute, I'm going to give him another similar video. It is incredible what they've done with the hacking the algorithms.
Yeah. Hey, for better or worse, right? Like at that level, is that good or not? And, this kind of opens up a whole nother conversation too. Like how good is it? What is the value add of our online lives being so curated to only what we want to see and only what we're interested in and only our bias and only our point of view, right? So, I mean, that's a much deeper philosophical conversation, but when you have an algorithm that's working at such a high level like that, and it just keeps feeding you more and more of what you want and what you believe and what your values are, the deeper the divide is between any other points of view or any other information, right? And so I truly think that social media, for all the things that it's good for, and I certainly love it for keeping in touch with my family and friends and that kind of stuff, I certainly think there are a lot of downsides as well. And one of them is division. For me, I see a lot of division in that space. Just being open and honest about that, and a lot of misinformation and a lot of bias because the algorithm is geared so heavily toward giving us what we want.
The one thing it does do pretty well, though, it'll give you at least one video on something that is relevant and current to the day. Like yesterday, the day before, there was a video about Bob Uecker, and I do watch some sports stuff on there. But Bob Uecker, famous baseball announcer. If you don't know baseball, you probably know him from Major League, just a bit outside. So but then, so if you watch that, then it'll give me 3 more Bob Uecker videos. And so it'll throw something that you probably haven't seen in a while, just to almost check if you're interested or it's current event. And then if you watch most of the video, it'll be like, all right, they probably like it. And then, 3 videos later, you get something again. And then they measure how long did they watch that one? Was it just a quick swipe, or did they watch that again? So it is fascinating how they do have that where you're stuck in your kind of views and what you like. And that it might be on TikTok, honestly, it could just be cat videos. I get a lot of dog videos, cute, adorable dog videos. But yeah, you can get into politics on there. You can get into health stuff on there. So it is, it's interesting.
It is. Yeah. So anyway, that's hey, for not having a specific topic for today's show, we're doing pretty good, huh?
Yeah, and just a shout out to all the first responders, everyone. I think we're gonna have somebody on from Pasadena next week to see what they're going through, because they're doing it as well. I'm just kind of arranging that now. So it's been a rough week for a lot of people. We had one of our principals lose a home. She was on one of our meetings this week, and it was just, you're wondering if she's going to be there, and then she just couldn't. She was overwhelmed with emotion so much, could barely talk, but she was so appreciative. In the darkness, there are so many silver linings that we have seen, and people saw this video of there's a group of firefighters leaving a restaurant, and the whole place erupted and applauded them, and their meal was paid for. And so it's been tough on a lot of people, and a lot of us. The CalSPER coming together and doing the webinar was nice, because you just get to commiserate with people and just kind of the this well, Matthew, if you don't you got to put on your air mask first, and then before you can take care of others. So, but in crisis, we neglect that in our positions, because we're working nonstop and trying to help people and coordinate. But you do need to take a moment for yourself, reflect, recharge, and get back at it.
Yep, absolutely agree.
All right, man. We'll stay in touch. Great seeing you as always. Appreciate the insights. Some heavy topics lately, but I think we've hopefully given some people some good information to consider and to educate themselves on. So appreciate that. We really appreciate our sponsors too. Peach Jar, very exciting stuff happening.
Yep.
And appreciate Peach Jar supporting Nickel Strategies. There's going to be a webinar with Nickel Strategies that is coming up soon. That is going to be really good. That is in the works. So we'll keep everyone posted on that. Check out nickelstrategies.com. It's more great newsletter speaking about keeping your families in touch, information communicated with and involved. S'more is a great way to do that. And School Status also really increasing engagement in doing all that. So check out School Status, S'more, Nickel Strategies, and Peach Jar. We really appreciate all they do.
Yeah, I'll say stay tuned on Peach Jar too. In about 2 weeks, we're gonna have a massive announcement.
Amazing
little teaser. Thank you, everybody.
Teaser. All right, everybody. We appreciate it very much.
Be sure to follow the School PR Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and X, where you can find additional resources and highlights from the show. Please like, subscribe, and all the fun stuff. And most importantly, without our sponsors, this podcast doesn't exist. Please visit schoolstatus.com, peachjar.com, nickelstrategies.com, and s'more.com. Until next time, keep learning, inspiring, and making a difference. Thanks so much for your support of the School PR Podcast.